USA Warrior Stories is a not-for-profit organization designed to record, archive, and share videos of veteran stories, to help veterans make a connection with one another and to help us all better understand their sacrifices for our freedoms.
My name is Paul Hiatt. I live in Okeechobee, Florida. My dad was a pilot in the Navy and during the Korea and Vietnam time frame. We had lived in the Keys for a short period of time, and he worked on aircraft. Well, there was submarines down there in the mid-60s, and I was in scouting. And when we got to do things in the scouts, they wouldn't let us play with planes, so they had us shine brass and to teakwood decks on diesel submarines. Well, I fell in love with submarines, and when I graduated high school in Okeechobee, I went into service and I volunteered for submarine duty. After my dad retired from the Navy, he started a dive business in Key Largo, Florida. So navigation, I did a lot of that with my dad in his boat in this dive service, and it kind of put me in that aura of I want to be a navigator. I want to navigate. I want to do navigation. So that's how it started. You know, we look at size of a submarine. Football field long, half the width of a football field, 3 stories high on the inside, and that's a small one. Then you get into a larger one, almost 2 football fields long, half the width of a football field, 4 stories high. So submarines of today compared to diesel submarines, where it was one level and you just barely could get by somebody. Okay, so very, very different atmospheres in the newer submarine age. So August of '76 is when I went into the service. I went to boot camp in Great Lakes, Illinois, and got out of there. When I graduated, went off to my school. So it's called A School, and I went to Quartermaster A School. So I was an E1, and when I graduated this school, I was first in the class. They accelerated my advancement. I had to sign an extra contract to get it, but they accelerated me to E4. So by accelerating me to E4, it gave me an extra 3 years in service, and I was eligible. So when I got to my first submarine, I was an E4, Petty Officer 3rd Class. So the Will Rogers, when I got there, I was a Petty Officer 3rd Class, and I got all the jobs. The boss said, my senior enlisted Petty Officer, he said, do this, do this, do this, do this. And so I was at the low part of the totem pole, you know, so I did all the work and so on and so forth that we had. And stood watches, qualified different watch stations and navigation. So I was quartermaster of the watch, and we do the charts and we do everything. So now you're in the control room. You're always in the fray of what's going on every minute, so to speak, when you're on duty. The Will Rogers was a fleet ballistic missile submarine with the capability of weaponry that would travel 1,500 miles or so. So we traveled around. We went to the Mediterranean. We went to near the ice cap in the Barents Sea. So we were closer to targeting that we had. So then I went on an attack submarine, which was the DACE, and went on a Mediterranean run. And my supervisor felt that I needed extra training with fast attacks. So I went on this cruise for 3 months, and then I ended up back on the Will Rogers. So I got to see both worlds of fast attacks and the SSB and Navy. So then I went to the John C. Calhoun, and I had gained rank. So now I was starting to be in charge of personnel that were in my division. 9 months later, I made Petty Officer 2nd Class, which is E5. So I got advanced, and usually it takes you about 5 years to get advanced, and I did it within a year. And then I got to be the senior Petty Officer of the division on the Calhoun, and I was in charge of the whole division. Then when I left there, I ended up on I went to boot camp and trained recruits. So I trained 5 or 6 companies of recruits.
Where was that located?
Orlando, Florida. So I trained recruits at boot camp, like a drill sergeant. It was a drill sergeant for the Navy is what it was. And then I left there after my duty, and I went to the Lipscomb, which was a submarine that was out of Norfolk, Virginia, and it was an attack submarine. So now I've made rank. I'm a chief petty officer, and I'm in charge of department. So I have my division, but I have the ETs, and I also have the radiomen. So I'm now a department chief. So I've gained rank. Chief petty officer, I made it 6.5 years. And normally it's about 13 to 14 years when you make this rank. So I was very early in selection. And again, the school that I went to when I first got in put me in that environment. It put me it gave me all this time in service and everything else. And it says, you can take this test. And I took it. And I figured I had no chance. And boom, they said, you're selected. And I went, oh, okay. So that scenario happened. And I'm very fortunate that all this occurred that way. So I was on the Lipscomb. A fellow had got sick, and I ended up getting transferred to another submarine after about a year to the Narwhal submarine. Narwhal submarine was out of Charleston. So I left Norfolk, Virginia, went to Charleston, and I ended up on the Narwhal. Narwhal was a very sophisticated submarine for its time frame, and it was an attack submarine. And we did numerous operations. We had a special system, and it was underway a lot. We were underway out of 365 days a year for the 4 years I was on there. We were underway 270 days a year. This Narwhal submarine was the most prolific that I'd ever been on. Did numerous missions, all kind of stuff. Very, very secretive stuff that the Narwhal did. So, but it was underway a lot because it was the mechanical systems worked a lot better than a lot of other submarines. So consequently, it's been decommissioned since then. So left there, and I went back to boot camp, and I was a senior person then. So I was in charge of divisions and various things. Really didn't have to do too many recruit companies, but I ended up total between the two tours, I did 11 companies and being able to train. But the second time I went, I trained female companies. So I went back to Orlando, and then after I left Orlando, I went to the Pennsylvania out of Kings Bay, Georgia. There's a new submarine base there. It was a World War II depot, and then they reopened it in 1979, and they started having submarines go back out of there again, or out of there first time, but it was an Army depot during World War II. So when I went back to the Pennsylvania, now I've transitioned to the rank of E8, so a senior chief petty officer, and I'm now in charge of a department that's on a Trident class submarine, which we got a larger crew. So I was there, and then I got selected to be the chief of the boat. I got my qualifications done for senior enlisted advisor for the crew of a submarine. So I got selected, and I transferred off of the Pennsylvania and went to the Pittsburgh, and I was the senior enlisted advisor for the crew, essentially the third in command of the submarine. And so I had 17 middle managers, so it progressed all the way through life, and I'm very fortunate that all that happened, and that I got the leadership and I got all the other things. At no time that I ever felt that it was a difficult thing. It was just that it was evolving. It was always evolving. There was always something new every time you went on duty. So you stood watch 6 hours on, 12 hours off. So you had an 18-hour day is the way it rotated through. And you had training in there, and you had drills and so on and so forth. So being a missile-carrying submarine, or a mobile missile base, well, being that, you've got to be stealthy. You've got to hide behind things. So we used to hide behind rock formations under the water, and the submarine was actually made to where it could hover like a helicopter. So it's pretty cool. And then the Calhoun, we did launches. We did practice launches. We had a new missile system, and we did practice launches. So it was the first time I'd ever done an actual launch. So we launched three, we call them birds, three exercise weapons. And these are things that are 44,000 pounds apiece, you know, and they're shot out by air. And they're shot out 120 feet under the water. So, poof, they go out by air. They hit the air, they hit the surface, and they go 90 feet in the air, and they go light off. Boom. You know, they light off, and they're gone. The attack submarines tracked people. So during the Cold War, we were very aggressive to track Soviet submarines all the time. We still do, but we were more aggressive then, and they were more aggressive as well during what we call the Cold War time frame. So those vessels.
Was there this cat and mouse thing happening?
Cat and mouse all the time. It's been for years. But it was during the Cold War, it was more dominant. But when you're trailing somebody, you're trailing a submarine, I mean, real life, they can do that. You've seen movies where they talk about Crazy Ivan. Yeah. They do it, okay? They do it quite often. So we had one time where it turned and we kind of lost the bearing rate. And it was next to us. It turned and it was coming down the side, but they were at a different depth.
And what part of the world was this?
This is just in the Atlantic. Yeah, just in the Atlantic. Yeah.
How close are the Russians to the coast of the U.S.? I mean, realistically,
Nowadays, their fleet is smaller. They're not there. Yeah, so they don't. And for years, they're still standoffish. They're still further away. Yeah. So these dynamics, those are some of the prolific events. But going to the North Pole and breaking through the ice, we can break through 10 feet of ice. But being able to navigate under the ice is phenomenal. And I did it on one submarine where we went there twice. But breaking through the ice, and it's a free ascent. All you do is just, and you just free ascent and you break through the ice. You don't punch through the ice. No, you break something. You do that. You know. So, and we got little sonar that tells us how deep the water is, and then we can tell how deep the ice is and get to the right spot that we need to go to and things like that. And I served on the second submarine, the Pittsburgh, to ever shoot an aggression since World War II. During the Desert Storm War. Yeah, we had one instance where we had a reactor control panel. We were coming out of Norway, and we were supposed to come out. And in Norway, it's really unique because you could actually submerge next to a pier. It's like the fjords are 300 feet deep. You know, these are, I mean, we have to get past the 100 fathom curve off the coast of Florida to 600 feet of water before we can dive. I mean, we're 360 feet long and you can touch the bottom. Well, we come out of Norway and we ended up in, I don't know, 15, 18 foot seas. It was very rough that day. For some reason, I'm not sure what it was, but some kind of storm. Well, we're coming out of there, and we get in this bad weather, and we actually had a reactor controller panel burn up, just overheated based on the movement and all this stuff and everything else, and the way, because we're teardropped, no stabilizers, and it goes all over the place, the submarine, when it's on the surface. It's not made to run on the surface. So ended up where we had a fire, we burned up this controller. Well, we couldn't submerge because we couldn't get the reactor critical. So we had to run on a diesel engine, very high powerful diesel engine, for like 3 days. And we had to cross across all this heavy, bad water on the surface. And we had to go over to Holy Loch, Scotland to get repairs. That was probably one of the scariest because the reactor was shut down. So we were vulnerable.
So everything you're on was nuclear powered?
Yep, all nuclear powered. Yep. I tried to get on a diesel submarine and they had 2 left when I got in. That's what I really wanted to get on. Okay. So when I first got in '76, there was 2 submarines that were still diesel submarines, one on the East Coast, one on the West Coast.
Was it the 30th of September was the anniversary of the Nautilus being launched?
Underway on nuclear power was in 1955, the first one. Reactor was about 1 foot in diameter and about 1 foot tall, and all it was a big heating element. Okay, now they're about 3 feet by 3 feet. So most of the time we spent 100-day times on missile patrols, and then we had another crew that come in. So we'd be on for 100, off for 100, on for 100, off for 100. So I did that 15 times that I did patrols, and then for the time of being on a fast attacks, I had six month deployments on the attack submarines. So about 8 years total, if I put a number on it, 8 years literally underwater out of 16 years at sea. So about half the time I was literally underwater. The dynamic of this vessel, I never felt that I was going to lose my life in any of the submarines that I've ever served on, by virtue of just the crew, but also the vessel, that it's a very, very well maintained, it's a safe environment. I feel safer in it than I do in my car sometimes. I was just excited to be there, and the adrenaline just stays with you for years and years and years. It's even now. Put me back. Put me back in the game, Coach.
Yeah. We may need you, sir.